Hey guys, a Fujoshi commentary here, and today I wanted to talk about something that I was planning on talking about in another video that I'm working on, but currently I feel like based on the climate and some of the newest stuff I've been seeing going on with this meme in particular, I feel like it's only appropriate that I come on here and I talk about it to you guys and at least give you my take and my stance on it as somebody who's actually been in the community. By the title of this video, this is about traps, or are traps gay, and the sort of debate thing. Now, if you've ever heard that term, you probably know what I'm talking about, or at least kind of catch on what the meme is. Are traps gay was a meme that kind of circulated on sites like 4chan, Reddit, Facebook. There are even groups dedicated to trapping, Trap Hell, Trap Haven, Trap Purgatory, Trap Paradise, things like that. And in response, it became a sort of a meme when it started growing in popularity and became more popular with kinks and groups and fetish sites and things like that. It's always been a thing, it just became more mainstream and popularized. It became a sort of low-key meme that everyone kind of just used as a sort of joke, or they just used to kind of find out who people are in the community and things like that. So if you've ever heard, are traps gay, most of the time you'll get the response yes, or I plead the fifth, or what is this, or some sort of bunt joke just to kind of get a reaction. And it's a common thing to be asked at like panels and like particularly anime-esque or very nerdy panels, because the trap culture is very enriched in there, and that's a lot of where it started out in the anime field as far as it being like literature, just emphasized on the subject. Now before we get into if traps are gay, we should get into what a trap is. Trap is basically somebody who dresses as a female or in feminine clothing and presumes the role as a female. Now, it's usually someone who is born a male who does this. It's pretty much universal, and I say this in defense because I personally am a part of this community, and seeing it being shredded to bits by people on both sides is kind of disheartening, and it kind of makes me wish that this was still just kind of a niche sort of fetish, call me a hipster or whatever, but I feel like it kind of should have been, because it's really garnering a lot of misinformation and a lot of just yelling and screaming on both sides of the aisle. So I want to kind of bring it in a little close and let you know some of my thoughts based on what I've been exposed to throughout the years. Now, trapping as a whole, being it be a guy who is born as a male, dressing up in female clothing, or being a, sort of figure of femininity, androgyny, and who passes and has a very strong resemblance to a female or a girl, in the sense that the person who is talking to them, or a male or female, would think of them as a female. It's been an online debate or sort of meme that traps are gay. Are traps gay? Are traps cute? Does the dick make it cuter? Does the dick make it better? Sort of things like that. Just little memes that are just kind of raunchy in nature, because the nature of the trap culture is pretty raunchy. Now, when I say that, there is this video that surfaced, and I believe it is from a beautiful thing. Like, people have been asked this throughout both sides, left and right. There have been people like Milo Yiannopoulos who have been asked if traps are gay.
On the docket today, are traps gay? For the benefit of jury members, traps are men who appear so close to women that they're often mistaken for them.
It's a trap!
The matter before the court is whether or not, having realised your mistake, it is gay to continue to find the trap sexually attractive. I'm ready to give a ruling, and I'm happy to tell jury members that traps are indeed gay. So gay. I mean, they're just the gayest thing. I mean, how could you be gay? Next case!
There are people like Blair White who have said, are traps gay? And they've said yes. There are people on the left side who have been asked this question and they don't really know how to answer it, I guess because they don't really get the joke, or they have no idea what a trap is, or they see trap as synonymous with the sort of derogatory way that it was presented in the United States, with men who would get or hook up with women who happened to be trans and they didn't find out until when they got in bed or close to that time that the trans woman had a penis and not a vagina, therefore saying that this is a trap, you didn't tell me, things like that. And I'm not really going to get into that sort of aspect of things because that is an entirely different subject for more a political, sort of social, sort of opinionated thing. I don't really have too many opinions on that. I just want to get through as far as trap being in the culture as it is, being in fiction, and being in the sort of act of trapping. So, to elaborate, this convention called CoxCon in 2017, I think it's run by a YouTuber known as Total Biscuit, and one of the panelists in this Ask Attendee sort of thing, the attendee's name is called Jesse Cox, and he was at a panel and they were doing like an AMA or something like that, or an Ask panel, and one of the attendees who was to ask him something asked him the infamous question, are traps gay? Now I will show you a clip of this. It's going to be pretty short. The clip itself is pretty short, but the reaction towards the question kind of begs to differ, that he either doesn't know what traps are, he knows what traps are and is debating whether or not to say it, or he's just completely floored and shocked and is pretty much debating whether or not he should say it based on the sort of parameters and climate that that word can carry. So here it is.
Yo, in the back. What up, dude? So, me and a couple friends were having a discussion about this at the bar last night. Are traps gay?
What?
Are traps gay? No, genuine question.
Now in response to that video, Total Biscuit, another YouTuber who was running the event at CoxCon, had issued out some tweets saying that he was going to find out who the person who asked the question was, and he was going to have them kicked out of the convention. They weren't going to tolerate transphobic words, which I had him until he said transphobic words. And if anybody in the trap culture knows that traps are not a transphobic thing. In fact, if you talk to many trap supporters and people who like traps, people who draw traps, people who like to dress up as traps, they do not consider transgender male to female people as traps. It's not a thing. It's either they're a woman or they are a trap. And if I can kind of explain that in detail, let me. Now before you bring in the hordes of those activists and mass dislike this video, please hear me out on what I have to say. I'm not saying that trap was never used as a transphobic slur for people who, as I stated earlier, didn't know if a woman had a penis or if she had a vagina, and sees it and is either not told or just doesn't get it that someone is trans, and they say that's a trap, that's gonna, you know, this, I'ma kill you and things like that. That horrible stuff, yeah, that isn't synonymous with the trap as far as that word. The actual term has varying meanings, trap. Now, I know I've heard about other YouTubers talking about this, like Sargon of Akkad and things like that, the transphobic debate, but my personal take on this is I've been in the trap community for quite a long time. I draw traps for a living. That is something I love to do. I like to take characters who are extremely androgynous in appearance, or just characters I've created on my own, or even characters who are pretty male, as far as you wouldn't have any confusion distinguishing that they are a male from a female. And I like to make them very cutesy, very feminine, and very trap-like, because that is something of an art to me and to many other people. Now, as far as trapping in actual real-world context, it has been going on way before gender dysphoria was a thing, way before people understood transgenderism and being trans and things like that. It has been going on way before even we understood things like the epitome and the just wholehearted distinction of gender roles, gender versus sex, and things like that, that sort of debate. There were people as early back as the earliest settlements when theater and things like that started. Most notable history is from the feudal era and Shakespearean era, where men would dress up as females because females weren't allowed to be in the theater and act as performers, and they would look convincingly like women and act because that was a part of their job, and they would be of the form of the first few traps. There were even some spies who were traps. Now, my personal take on traps versus transgender people is that traps are boys or men who are completely just, they're in their cis body or whatever you want to call it, born body, born gender, sex, whatever. They're there. They're boys. They identify as guys and boys. They like to dress up as females for whatever reason, whether they like to feel pretty for a day or a few nights. It's a kink with their partners, whether it be a male partner or a female partner. Typically it's seen more with male partners that they like to kind of spice it up and dress up and things like that, but there are plenty of girls who love to see their men dress up as females, which is not a problem, especially for those people who claim that kink shaming is a horrible thing. I really hope that you're not out there shaming people because they're into trap culture. That would be kind of hypocritical. They're essentially just boys who like to dress up in female clothing and be pretty. I know plenty of guys who are normal, everyday guys, you know, as far as the aspect of they're not too metrosexual or they're not extremely flamboyant and not very hung up on fashion, you know, sort of in the outside world, but they like to on their downtime and online and in these sort of trap groups that I recommend you join if you do want to get a taste and see what trap culture is like. I do advise if you go to Trap Hell or anything with the word hell in it, expect that there will be a heavy amount of shit posting, but places like Trap Haven, Trap Paradise, Trap Purgatory, all those places like that, it's a pretty inclusive and very welcoming community. I see that as just a sort of fetish, a sort of kink, like a drag queen, or just anything that is something that you want to do in an artistic standpoint or just to make you feel better about yourself. Something you like to try around and just play around with because that's something you're very comfortable with, but you don't have any sort of dysphoria, you don't have any sort of desire to be the opposite sex or be the opposite gender. You just want to dress up and feel pretty. And I know a lot of people have an issue with saying dress up because it could be implying that trans people who transition and completely change their wardrobe to their desired gender could also be lumped in with dress up, but trust me personally, I do not classify that being trans as dressing up. That's not me. So you can rest assured in this video, when I use dress up as a term, it is not as a term to belittle or lump any sort of trans person, because transitioning into what my definition and my intake on trans is being somebody who has gender dysphoria, and this is personally me. I believe that if you are transgender, based on many of the trans people I've talked to, whether it be friends, whether it be people I've just asked in transgender based groups because I wanted to know their opinion, it is usually they have a sort of gender dysphoria that whether it was diagnosed or not based on differing parameters, it is there, they feel it, it is something that affects them neurologically, and science and test studies have backed this up as well. And they want to become their desired gender. They want to get hormones, they want to get facial reconstruction to make themselves look like more of the gender that they feel like they should be, and things like that. They are a woman. A trans woman is a woman. To me, it's that. It's like a trans man is a man to me. If you want to be called male and you let me know, that's perfectly fine with me. I don't have any issue. I don't see you as a trap because essentially you're not trapping. The idea of trapping is wanting to see how well you can look like a certain way for a short period of time, or said period of time you feel like is you. It's like cosplaying. Cosplay in a way is a form of trapping, but in a different aspect. You want to be and portray a character. You want to see if you look exactly like that character or how close you can get to that character, whether it be with makeup, prosthetics, the costume itself, the wig, everything. You want to see how far you can get with it and how well you look good in it. That is a form of trapping, and then you take it all off and you're done. It's something that you enjoy, it's a hobby, and it isn't hurting anyone. Now, me personally, I draw traps. I'm not really as far as the in trap because obviously I'm born a female, so it would defeat the purpose. But I have considered myself as far as when I cosplay a reverse trap because I enjoy cross-playing and things like that. Passing off as male when I'm a female just to test my skills in artistry and makeup. I don't think that's anything inherently transphobic because obviously I don't have any sort of dysphoria. I'm not mocking anybody who does have dysphoria or identifies as a transgender person, so I don't see the issue there. Now, I do agree that there are people who still synonymously see traps as trans, and that is their entire mindset. I can't speak for them and I can't speak for anyone else but me. But me personally, I feel like that this has just become a sort of hate train monologue to sort of just own a word that apparently it hurts you, but you want to own it to the fact that no one else can say it, when in reality there are various meanings for words. Trap alone has various meanings. Trap can mean a drug house, trap can mean ballin', I'm trappin'. Trap house, meaning a place where you sell drugs. Trap music, a stylized form of music that has a enhanced dubstep with a sort of rap vibe to it. Just like there are several other words like queer or gay. Gay meant happy, then gay became a derogatory slur for people of the homosexual and the lesbian community. That was a thing, and then they embraced the word and used it. Even symbols, Nazi symbols that were used to identify gay people in Nazi Germany during the Third Reich, there are now gay rights activist groups using that symbol as a symbol of pride and badge to wear it on them and taking it back. I don't see why using a word or a symbol that was once meant as a term of hate by a specific group of people for whatever reason in their ignorance and biases should be held still as a hate symbol when it's not even talking about that. I remember this specifically because I was approached by somebody who claimed to be a trans activist when I was posting in a group about my art. The post had been deleted by a moderator, which I couldn't get screenshots of, sadly, but the person had an issue with me calling my artwork people who I have been in this community for and have seen and been in the fiction and everything, saying that my character was a trap. They had an issue with that, and they tried to make it seem like they didn't hate the fact that I had my art in the way it was, but they just didn't like the fact that I was using traps. And the funny thing is, when you ask people like this to tell you, well, what should I call them? What would you be comfortable with? They have no answer for you, because it's really just something that they either misunderstood or they constantly want to hang on to this word as hatred. When people don't even identify trans people as traps, the only time that that will ever happen is if a trans person themselves inserts themselves into the trap community and embraces that term for themselves, which is 112% their own choice. And they can be a part of that if they want to. There are even some people I've seen who are thinking about transitioning or have gender dysphoria and they don't really know how to cope with it, and sometimes the transgender groups that they're in don't really help them out, so they go into these trap groups and they see all this sort of support and things like that, and it kind of helps them feel into a comfortable placehold with transitioning. I've seen plenty of posts like that and talked to some people who have had this issue because they feel like it's fine. And I personally feel like the trap culture is fine. Obviously you're going to have people who sort of troll and completely berate the movement, which you can see by telling the BL genre and the yaoi fans and fujoshis and how we're labeled as this and that because a few people whip out yaoi paddles and start harassing people, which is not right. But then you start getting that assumption that every yaoi fan is like that. I don't know how many times I've been asked, do you do such and such just like some crazy yaoi fangirl? And as soon as you say no, it's just like, ooh, it's a relief, and you're like, wow, people really think this about us. It's very disheartening to hear, and I feel like there is context. Every word has context. I feel like that should be something that is taken into account. If the context is not there, if you don't see any sort of signs of actual, like, being a transphobe or being some sort of horrible person to the point that you're trying to be an asshole or saying something that is blatantly insensitive, I don't think you should be reaching for something to be offended by. Fiction, it portrays traps in all sorts of lights, from hermaphrodites to very androgynous men who can sort of fluctuate between these sort of masculine and feminine tropes, to just beautiful sets of fetish pinup lineup, to these artists who love drawing their characters in very feminine, very drag queen, very transvestite level sort of drawings and looks. And I don't think anything's wrong with that, as long as nobody is coming at you saying you're this and that or comparing you to such and such, which you should address on an individual basis. I don't see the problem with it. And I challenge anybody who feels like that I'm wrong to just join Trap Heaven. join Trap Haven, join Trap Purgatory, one of these very small but very niche trap groups, and just see what it's like in there. Talk to some of the people in there, see what they're feeling. Trap Paradise is a #1 recommendation because it's a place where there are several different people of all walks of life who are of all different sexualities and things like that, coming together, sharing photos, and feeling like they're best and they're pretty, something that they probably wouldn't be able to do out in the real world with fears of being labeled a sissy, or on the other side, apparently from the trans side of things, a transphobe or mocking trans people, which is not at all what's going on, whether it be intent or in actuality. So I feel like this whole debate thing, I would love it to die down. I really wish that the whole trap culture would have been sort of preserved and still on the back burner the way I like my sort of interest to be, so that there's not too much misinformation, but unfortunately for me it's not, and I have to come out here and defend something that I feel like shouldn't really have to be defended. I feel like context clues and common sense should sort of be second nature for stuff like this, but apparently it's not, and it's getting to the point where people who are misunderstanding the movement, subculture, whatever you'd like to call it, are being banned from events, which personally they have the right to do, which they have every right to do because it is their event, it is their private event, they are putting their money into it, it's their policy, their rules. But claiming that something is transphobic when clearly this meme has never really been transphobic, are traps gay? Really? Like, crack open a yaoi manga site, like, riddled with traps, cross-dressing, you know, they're there. It's riddled with them. And with that being said, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I hate that this is kind of a ranty-ish video, and I really don't like responding to a lot of like drama posts and things like that in the YouTube sphere, but this is something that I personally have been around, something I've personally dealt with for years, as far as the trap course and trap culture, from the 80s with Kodaku Kazuma making Chimera, to the 90s with things like Animal X and Marginal, which was by Hagiyamoto, which completely had the concept of a male who wanted to look extremely androgynous to the point that he looked more feminine, and they were worried about getting facial hair and things like that because they wanted to be men with men because they had to breed and things like that, and sort of hermaphroditus syndrome, to just cutesy little comics about guys who love dressing up as females and feeling safe, things like Ritsu from Fruits Baskets, who enjoy dressing up and sort of trapping, I guess you'd say, as a female to feel confident, feel pretty, feel safe for whatever amount of time they can feel that way, when ultimately they kind of may have some underlying issues going on, whether it be actual gender dysphoria that they might be thinking about, or something else that's pressuring them. I don't feel like people should judge this at face value and just generalize everything and then go out saying things like our trap's gay is totally transphobic, when it's really just a hilarious but kind of dying out meme that just kind of communicates with other people who like traps or get the fact that, you know, traps are a thing. It's kind of ridiculous to me. And with that being said, guys, I think I'm done rambling for now. It is about 12 or 1 o'clock in the morning as I'm filming this. I felt like I should do it on the spur of the moment while I was editing another video that should be coming up in the next few days. I really need to start actually sleeping, but I felt like I should make this on the spur of the moment, I guess, because I wanted to, I don't know what I wanted to do. I just wanted to sort of explain my side of things and why I feel like this is over embellishment and that there are real instances of transphobia that are being ignored over stuff like this. I feel like it's kind of like the Dream Daddy situation with the fan artist, the Latina fan artist who got berated and called a cis white male because she gender bent the Dream Daddy team, and one of the trans men was turned into a gender bent version, so a woman, I guess you would call it a trans woman then. So it's not a big deal to me. Fiction is fiction, and if people want to trap in their real lives and be femboys in their real lives, then let them. They're not hurting anyone, as long as they're not doing anything to harm you or impose on you and treat you like you're a bad person as far as physically, verbally, or any sort of abuse towards you So with that being said, guys, thanks for watching, and I will have more actual content related videos for you in the future. Peace, love, and stay groovin', humans.